Good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Okay, good evening, everyone, or good afternoon. Let's see if we can admit everyone else here. I think we're waiting for a few other people. Happy New Year. I think Maggie and Jason are going to join us. Hi, Erin. Welcome. I know this is like a fun, our dog just literally ate my daughter's book. So it is true. Dogs will eat the homework. There it is.
I think I actually had that same thing happen, but it was my student's work. So I actually had to say, I'm sorry, I can't return your essay. My dog literally ate it.
Literally. Yes. Like not seen that before, but
Right.
That was tasty.
It definitely happened to two of them.
If I can just remind everyone to take just the few minutes while we wait for everyone to join us to kind of just add your notes up at the top in terms of your name. Hi, Felicia.
Hey.
Hi, Elisa. Hi, Suzanne. Hi, Ava. Hi, Vivian. Welcome back. Hi, Carrie. I know it looks like Maggie's going to be running a few minutes late. That's because she now has 3 children. One additional child that was born probably the day of our last meeting.
Wow.
And Jason is joining us as well. But let's get started in about 2 minutes. If there's anybody else is joining us. I know Maya's going to be potentially late. And those are the only people that have been reached out that said they weren't going to be making it. And Michelle, can I share the agenda on my side or you can share it on your side?
Yep, I will share right now. But you have the capability to share anything you want to, Jen.
Okay, great. It sounds like Dr. Johnson is coming, but he's having to deal with something right the second too. So we'll get started without the two of them and just kind of do some check-ins and kind of run through what the agenda could be for today and kind of do some recapping and then go from there. Does that sound okay? Because we'll respect the time. So first thing I wanted to just say is welcome back to the Equity Task Force. I don't know about all of you, but it kind of January 5th, I thought our meeting was next week. So we are prepared, but at the same time, I think January came quickly for me. So a couple of just for today, I wanted to just outline some of the outcomes that we hope to kind of have for today and then kind of go through the agenda, kind of using some of the information we gathered from the 15th, the meeting on the 15th, and kind of share with you some of my recap notes, as well as kind of some things that we had talked about being able to accomplish maybe before we move on, or things that we should suggest to the board. So today, with the hopes of today would be that we continue to initiate our community building that we're doing. I think find a norm on our vision and mission statement, as well as the equity statement to put before the board. So I have one that we've, maybe fine-tuned a little more and see if we can kind of get that off of our agenda for any further meetings. It may not happen, but that would be a goal for today. And then I know that we can kind of talk through this as we go, but identifying a potential way to identify some data that we could use. And that will go back to what we talked about on the 15th in terms of there was a desire to have a survey, that kind of thing. So we're going to look at how we could kind of get to that as an outcome today. So in terms of an icebreaker, first I wanted to, let me see, is Maggie on here yet? If not, I will pull up the icebreaker suggestions.
I don't see her in the meeting yet, Jen.
Okay, hold on. All right, let's do a good, we'll try to stay on time target here. So there was 3 choices of potential questions for the icebreaker today, and I would like to suggest that we do how would you like to positively influence the life of a child or student this year, or a peer? Positively influence the life of a child, student, or peer this year. We can start with that one. Hi, Dr. Johnson. Welcome.
Hi, my apologies for being late.
All right. So I'm gonna. Who would like to? Anybody like to start today?
I'll start. Late bird, so I'll go first. It's aspirational, sure, but like I would like to positively influence our children by finding a way to get our children back in school. This has been a 6-month in the making, maybe longer if you think about it, safely, of course. But I do think that ultimately our children need to be in school. So that's something that we work towards every day. But I had a popcorn, right?
Yeah.
Man Ray, who can't catch a break with Florida.
Yeah, it's a tough week for Gator Nation. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
I'd probably also like to positively influence a child or children through coaching. I work with some kids now during a little football camp, and also through volunteer work with myself, my wife, and my eldest, trying to give back a little bit to the community to bring a little positive, bring a little sunshine to some who are less fortunate than we are. And I will popcorn to, how about Vivian?
Sure. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all. I think, especially now, since we can't see everybody in person, what I'd like to do for my peers is I really want to be there for all of my peers just to listen. I think now's the time where like we don't have that environment where we can see each other every day and like check in with each other to see like how everybody's doing and like their well-being and all that. And so I think I just want to try really hard as well as I can digitally to just try to be there for my peers and listen. And I guess I'll popcorn to Elisa.
Okay, so I was going to say something very similar to Vivian. Basically, just I would love to be there for my peers and my friends, just if they ever need help or if they ever just need someone to talk to, especially now since there's so little of that, like those resources around us now with like the virtual learning and stuff. So yeah, I just really like to just be there for them. Popcorn to Eva.
Hi everyone. I want to be positive with my peers. You know, simple as saying hi, but you know, not everyone wants to really share. So it's really about saying, how are you really doing during this time, and getting that feedback from them, whether it's positive or negative from them, just allowing them to get their worries off their chest. That's how I would. And I'll popcorn to Felicia.
Great comments. I would like to build back kind of a sense of adventure. Like I think we've been home and we've been safe and we've been kind of in the nest for a long time. At least we have been in my family, and I want a little bit of spirit of adventure back. So I want to kind of instill that in some my kids and some youth and some of the students that I work with. Like, let's get out and take some risks or do something new or get out of the house and try something. I think we're getting a little comfortable. We're antsy, but we're kind of safe and comfortable. So something to bring back a little adventure. And I'm going to popcorn to Erin.
Hi, everybody. So I think something I'm going to try and do, we have at my school grade levels, and we try and have like grade level assemblies, obviously virtually, once a month, where we highlight our students. And then even though I hate it, we always choose students of the month. I always want like way more than they give us to acknowledge, but we drop off little goodie bags at their house and we take pictures and we like honk our horns. And so I just want to get back into that. And, you know, we don't get close to them and we wear masks, but it's like a little bit of face-to-face interaction, just letting our students know that, you know, their teachers are still here and we still, you know, care and love them. And I think they like having their teachers come by their house. So hopefully get to do that again soon. I'll go ahead.
Erin, did you popcorn to Hillary?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it was hard to hear you at the end.
Can you hear me okay? Oh my gosh, it's a first. I think I'm just gonna add to what's already been said, especially for family and kids at home, but just for the community at large, just to make things more fun. I think we've been living in not necessarily a grim time, but just sort of a solemn time. So it's just, you know, time to add more positivity to life, you know, pay attention to the present moment that you're in, and just have a spirit of just continuing to look forward. And I will popcorn to Suzanne. Have you gone?
I have not. I think I would like to, I work mostly with a lot of middle school students. And so I think I'd like to help them to feel not too overwhelmed with their schoolwork, not feel like they're alone, you know, sitting at home doing it by themselves, even though they are, you know, to know that we're always here for them, somebody's here for them, so that they can feel a little bit more happy and confident and not quite as overwhelmed with all of this. So that would be my hope of what I'd like to work on in this spring. I will popcorn to, who has not gone? Carrie.
Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. So I don't work with children, but I have many of them. And we've been, doing this distancing thing, and it's been really trying for my kids. And so I think if I was able to do something for kids, it would really focus on mental health and feeling just connected and seen. I think, especially for middle school kids who this is the time where they're kind of pulling away from parents and leaning into each other, and they're missing that key developmental time. And I think it's really taking a toll on their self-esteem, and they're feeling really disconnected. And so I would love to find a way to foster that connection for them, more importantly than any of their academic development. I think that social emotional piece has really been lacking, and it's been very painful for our family. So that's my hope. And get them back to school, Dr. Johnson, like you said, although my oldest is in a different school, but wear your masks, people. And I will popcorn. Oh gosh, I feel like we've made a lot of coverage here. I'm scrolling. We did Vivian, we did, who am I missing?
I think we have Jen
Cedarquist. Okay.
Myself and Maggie left.
Okay. Jen Cedarquist.
Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. I think following up Carrie, I really want to talk about that social emotional piece. I had my students do an end of trimester reflection and really wanted to know what was going well, what wasn't going well, what they really enjoyed. And overwhelmingly, my students responded really positively to our social emotional learning time, which sometimes is just bring a blanket and, and snuggle up with a stuffy and I'll read a book, or we'll just chat about something. And, I really was inspired to do this following an educator I really respect. I've talked about Liz Kleinrock before, but she really talks about getting away from the grind culture that we tend to really lean so much into as Americans in general. And so it's really to just stay focused on that SEL piece and to really listen to my kids and see what they want. Real quickly, this week, instead of our small group reading or writing, we just did small group chats, and I just let them talk about their break, and we practiced active listening. And it was just really beautiful to see them just be kids. And I really want to give them more of those opportunities. Oh, is anyone left? I'm sorry. Jen, did you go? Is Maggie here? I'll have to scroll.
Maggie's here. Yeah, we'll go Maggie and I'll go last.
Okay.
Hi, all. Happy New Year. Excited to be back with the group. I'm thinking about my peers and my colleagues on my work team. And one of the things I picked up from one of my mentors at work was just how important it is to take those first few minutes of the call and just do a real human check-in to see where folks are at. Things feel so busy with Zoom calls just back to back all day, but taking the time to really do a human check-in has been gratifying and just nice to reestablish all those pieces. So it's something I hope to continue on into the new year. Jen Cole.
And I'm going to build on the fun part. Is I was a former 5th grade teacher, and my daughter's in 5th grade this year, and I know that right now teachers are having to just condense everything that they're teaching. So the way I want to influence a child this year would be my own children and maybe some of her friends, and do some sort of a mad scientist period, because I know we're just not really getting into science right now. So I thought maybe I'd just do something once a week or twice a week to just kind of make school a little more fun with mom. So that was my plan of influence. Mad scientist Jen. I'll let you know how it goes the next couple of weeks. All right. Well, let's move on then. Thank you for everyone for participating in that. I know it takes a little time, but I think each time it kind of sheds some light on the group, which I really like to see. All right, let's look back at the agenda. So let me run through kind of what the plan is for today. I'm going to give you a bit of a summary from the meeting notes that I took from the 15th, and I've shared them with Jason and Maggie as well. And then we can kind of talk about some of the outcomes potentially from that. we wanted to share with you all, you may have already read it because it's been a document that we've had on our agenda previously, but it's called the Annie-EKC Anti-Racist Organization Action Guide. And it kind of is, I think, a good follow-up to what the summary of the notes that we had and kind of the feelings that we were having in the last meeting on the 15th. We are gonna take a few minutes just to talk about data and observations and how we could kind of approach that from a next steps perspective, and listen to Dr. Johnson has prepared some responses to some of the data questions that we did have, and we just haven't circled back with that so the last couple meetings. So we thought maybe this would be a good way to start the new year, just to kind of let ourselves kind of ease into this a little today. And then the last part, sorry, Michelle, could you scroll down on the agenda slightly? You're going too far back. Yep, that's good. Is we have a potential equity task force kind of mission and vision and a statement. And these are types of things that we want to maybe look at and confirm that we are comfortable with putting in front of, like bringing to the board as a potential thing to look at. And then maybe the last part of the meeting, we can talk about if we are comfortable with looking at what kind of benchmarks and goals, but that may be something we need to return to at the following meeting. So let's start with Michelle. Sorry, can you go back up on the agenda there? Or is there any way to open it for the whole screen or make the actual page a little longer? And while you do that, why don't we go through can I click on my meeting notes, or no? I have to just share them differently? Or can you click on that, Michelle, the meeting notes from the last meeting?
Yeah, sorry, Jen. Every time I tried to click on my mic, it moves somewhere else.
No problem.
Yes, I'll click on that for you. And you can also
Does that get any bigger than that? If not, this is what I'll do. Hold on one second. I'm going to see if I can. Oh, there we go. I just wanted to recap for everyone this is what I took away from the last meeting, and we can kind of see if we all agree on this. It's very hard to read from this. See if we can get it to. All right.
Are you able to send a link, Jen?
Yep. Let me see. Let me see here.
Now it looks like it's full screened.
Okay.
Give people a thumbs up if you need help reading.
Oh, did it go away, Michelle? Okay, there we go. Does everyone want to just read through this for a few minutes and then we can kind of discuss to make sure we're all on the same kind of page? I don't know if you need me to read it to you, or how about I give you like 3 minutes to scan through?
Yeah,
you can get it through your link. I send it a link in the chat too.
My link in the chat is showing that access is denied, but I can see this.
Yeah, mine too.
Okay, hold on. Does that help anybody? Or we'll just look at it here. If you need a few more minutes, let me know. Just give me a thumbs up. Okay, I don't see any thumbs up, so I'm gonna start talking now. So I think, does anyone have any questions or things that I missed maybe from the December 15th meeting, looking back at these notes? I thought it was for me, it was a good refresher for what the meeting was about and how we kind of just were able to regroup as I feel like a team and say, hey, there's some things we're missing and we want to look at this data. But we need I think the major call out from that was we're interested in doing a climate data survey, gathering climate data from the school. Is that what everyone else thought was like the major takeaway? Yeah. And that the second thing was, are there some things that the group can start doing now that fit within the parameters of the equity task force and our role? Would that be the second thing that everyone kind of thought leaving that meeting? Can I get a thumbs up if that's... Thank you, Hillary.
Jen, I think you're nailing it. My takeaway was that we were looking at creating an environmental model where we were going to address everything in both high risk and low risk ways. And I think you captured it. The high risk way being the climate survey, the low risk way being the pen pals, and like everything in between. And so, thinking about all of this together would shape and create an environment where there would be a priority around inclusion. And I think that meeting was a huge success for capturing that all things, all ways will make a difference.
Yeah, well, I think we all, I know I left that meeting feeling that way too. I think there were, we also just want to talk about some of the things we feel like as we should probably present to the board before we move forward. In terms of like just getting buy-in from the board, like, are you comfortable with the equity task force doing a couple of these things within the parameters of what the equity task force is? And the role the board gave the equity task force. And then there's some things we might want to table for a bit as we go through, as we shape and give the equity task force a framework as we work through what our framework is. So in saying that, I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. So Michelle, can we go back to the agenda? All right, cool, thank you. All right, so a couple of things that we thought we should and I say that when I say we, I mean, I think Jason, Dr. Johnson, Maggie, and I thought we should probably bring before the board were a conversation about a climate survey and a conversation about a speakers or a speaker series that we could do. And then looking at our change of timelines in terms of what the resolution outlined in terms of timelines and what we are feeling more comfortable because we want to do the best job we can. And we need more time. So Dr. Johnson, do you want to talk about the climate survey?
Yeah.
Now?
So what was brought up in the last meeting is about creating another data point for this task force to analyze that was maybe more targeted towards equity itself. So one thing I did pull was from an ACSD publication called Building Equity. It's very practical in nature, but in it has a student and staff survey, and it can be adapted for a parent survey as well. That assesses just that, kind of like the Maslow's hierarchy of equity purely from a school perspective. And so that is something that, if the equity task force is comfortable with it, like we could adapt, and then obviously we would share with the equity task force for feedback to try to put something out to our community.
In doing so, I feel like the board, we need to make the board aware of what we're wanting to do. So we're not, it's not a surprise that it's coming from this group. So I guess my suggestion would be that we get the district to help us draft a survey based off of the survey that Dr. Johnson has found. We can tailor it, and then we bring that in front of the board as like a discussion item. And I don't know if we need a board vote on it, but more just like wanting to engage, just make sure the board is engaged on why we want to have an additional data point.
Can you give us the name of the instrument again, Dr. Johnson? And I just want to look it up.
It's from a book. I'll send you the student staff version. Like in the book, they acknowledge that there's not a parent version of this, but they recommend that you adapt the student and staff version to create that. So that's something that I could do. And since I can send you an adapted version. You mean and then we can all provide feedback or input into it. But it'd be a Likert scale, and it's based off of a framework. Which I can also share, establishing equity at a school community. Like I said, it's pretty much like the hierarchy of needs in terms of equity.
And it was from the American. What's the association called that produces that document?
I always draw a blank when they do, but it's an ACSD publication. I'll send the equity task force now the publication itself.
Okay. Does anyone have any opposition to that, or would that seem like a good? We were like, that seemed like a great way to get this thing moving forward. There is a survey. It has a Likert score. It has like a framework around it. Mm-hmm. We can adapt it. We can give input. We can then share it with the board, and then we can, maybe make a goal to send it out by. I'm making this up, but the end of January.
Send it out to the board, or send it out to the community?
We have a board meeting on the 13th, and we have a board meeting on the 28th. So we probably would send it out to the community, to me, after the 28th.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I like that.
I agree, but I think we have to be very clear too what equity may be perceived as in the current environment that most students are learning. Or are we saying, think back to when you were in school and it was like this? So I just think we have to be really clear when we do this, which I think is important, but what school climate are we looking at? You know, I just think it's important to really think of the lens that we are asking people to view this survey through.
I'd also just give a counterpoint to it on it is I think, you know, we do have the Healthy Kids survey, which gives us some background data of what schools like. And if this ACSD survey like proves to be useful for data, like we can asterisk and say like, you know, this data was collected during, you know, COVID when people were at home and in like a weird space, but at least it gives us a snapshot of where families and kids are at in terms of how they're feeling. Because even over Zoom, there can be microaggressions, there can be biases, like it still allows us to like get a sense of where folks are at in terms of how they're doing that. And then going forward, like if it is a good tool, you know, it'll be helpful for us to then to continue to monitor what that looks like. So I hear you that like it will be a weird snapshot, but it is data that allows us to look at like how kids are feeling and how families are feeling about this right now.
Right. Maggie, I understand what you're saying. And I think maybe I just like wasn't really clear. I just mean we want to make sure when they're answering it that they're talking about, if we want to make sure we're talking about current, because sometimes when kids think about school, they're thinking back to like when they were in school. So I just want to make sure that whatever we do, we're really clear that everybody, when they answer it, are thinking of the same school environment. That's what was my point was. Yeah.
I think looking at the questions, it'll help us, Jen and Maggie, I think, since we don't know what the questions are right now, but we've had the same conversation about a different kind of survey that we were talking about putting out. And yeah, it's a real needle you got to thread this year. So can I just confirm that we're just getting a thumbs up that Dr. Johnson's going to send us this baseline survey that will be adapted and that we can make recommendations or comments on the survey, and then we would put it on the discussion item for the board for January 28th.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We are going to, go ahead, Dr. Johnson.
No, I sent the publication and I also sent the visual for the hierarchy of needs as well too.
Great, thank you. All right, so then we're gonna move on to one of the other ideas that kind of came out of the meeting on the 15th, which was having some sort of a speaker series or speaker that could come and talk to, whether it's the board, this group, or a group of parents, make it available to students or families. This is something that I know, I'll speak for myself, I thought that was a great idea, and I think it fits within the Equity Task Force's role right now. Anybody have any other comments about that or suggestions? Or I know Maggie, you had I made a suggestion about maybe we attach it to a board workshop so we can connect it.
I was going to suggest if anyone has recommendations that they would like to see in terms of a speaker, that they send them over to Dr. Johnson before the next meeting, so we can gather and do any investigation and see what costs are off of that, if we have to pay stipends or if it's somebody from the community or what that looks like. So if we can get that before the next agenda goes out, then the group can have input on what that looks like.
Anybody have any comments or questions or suggestions?
I just had a question or comment in terms of sequencing.
Yep.
I mean, because we were talking about the climate survey and then this sort of speaker community outreach or whatever we're going to call it. Would we want to do that to sort of set the table for the climate, in terms of this equity and building a better community, Zoom, whatever we're going to call it, to between teachers and administration and family members, parents, to talk about what we're doing, why this is important, and then explaining sort of what the survey is and how that feeds into the bigger picture as to what we're trying to accomplish here. That was my only thought.
I think that's a good thought.
I'd like to agree. I think it could set like a really nice foundation so that when people are talking We're all kind of on the same page. We're using the same language. We're understanding the same terms. And it can kind of not, be that foundation, but also a springboard to what other steps people want to take.
So how would you suggest, what would you suggest would be the steps? Aaron, Ray, either of you.
Well, I watched that Zoom with Dr. Kendi, and I thought it was very well done, where they had a moderator and then 3 administrators from different academic institutions. So I sort of envisioned, and I'm just throwing this out there, I sort of saw, a moderator and then maybe a rep from, if we're going to expand this to the greater community, Manhattan Beach, Redondo Beach, then we've got a rep for those 3 school districts, and those reps are feeding the questions to the moderator, as from the parents and the teachers and everything else. And in terms of, what is this thing called equity, and how is that different from equality, and what it is we're trying to do. So, I think if you have somebody who just gives a simple understanding as to what all this means, big picture, and then that will help us, I think, when we're sending out the survey, because we've got some buy-in and people aren't getting this random survey going, what the heck is this? And, it's easy to dismiss if you don't have a good foundation for it. So that's sort of what I had in my mind in terms of, this community equity symposium, Zoom, whatever you want to call it, to set the table for the climate survey. And it's just a matter of, I think, finding the right speaker and then figuring out the format, who's going to host it and whatnot, moderate.
Yeah, and I think the one that I had mentioned last time was more, their vision is more to create equity in schools. So it would be more for, maybe like the teachers, not saying that parents couldn't also jump in to understand maybe what the schools were doing, but their whole mission is basically to create like a culturally responsive schools and culturally responsive teaching, so that they are helping equip students to be anti-racist agents of change. And they do that by helping teachers understand why the work is important, and maybe looking at their own practices, unconscious bias and things like that. So I know that that one in particular would be more for the schools.
Anyone want to have any other things to add onto that, or suggestions that?
I can't help but hear all of this and kind of think about how it all links together, and the audiences and the kind of initiative, and how it comes back to the documents that we wrote. And I like what Aaron's saying about, like, okay, so we're directing something to the educators, we're directing something to the families, and we're looking at the community holistically. We're thinking about our own policies and practices, like making sure that this is touching everybody in some way, so that when we get this holistic kind of feedback with this climate survey, we have some sense of what this means for each community, and where it's grounded in terms of our own documents. So I like it. I wonder, Jen, I saw that at the end of this, there's a presentation to the board. I don't know whose presentation that is, yours or the committee's, but like, do we want to start building like this kind of, how does all of this fit together so that we can see it visually? Like, so they're not one-offs, that they connect in, and that they're grounded in ways that reinforce each other with everything that we do.
I like that idea, Felicia, almost like a flow chart. So we can kind of see we're all connected, but where are these pieces coming together, which I think Ray brought up, and it's a really good point. We've got lots of great ideas, and clearly they're connected by theme, but as far as flow, as far as schedule, how do these pieces fit together?
Mm-hmm. I think after our last meeting, I was like, oh man, it's almost like we need that visual. We're taking a 3-pronged approach, right? We're addressing this is, the education piece, we're addressing the achievement gap piece, and we're addressing the parent and community piece. And it's like all 3 of those are feeding into this goal of our equity task force. So,
oh wait, hold on. Can you start that over? I'll type while you say that. That's exactly what we're doing.
Well, funny that you say that you'd like a visual, because we have a visual I think that might help. So let's click on, Michelle, if you can, click on that Annie E. Casey Anti-Racist Organization Action Guide. This may just give us like a sample of like where, this is a framework that many universities, schools are using right now. So Michelle, if you can kind of, I think it's page 7 or 8. Right here, that's 7 key steps. If there's any way you can make that bigger. And this may not be exactly what you're talking about in terms of the flowchart connection, but this at least shows a framework of how to think about where we are in our process and what's needed as maybe the outcomes are, these connections to families, these connections to educators, these connections to students, but that there is a process that we kind of are all bought into here. Can you get any bigger than that, Michelle?
I put the link in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Maggie.
Sorry, Jen, I have to download it to enlarge it.
Michelle, you can click on the bottom right corner. There's going to be a plus. And when you put your mouse cursor on there, if you click the pluses, it'll get bigger.
There you go. Maggie, do you want to walk us through this? How you have been using it at LMU?
Yeah, sure. So I'm doing some work with the LMU School of Education around this, and with our alumni association. And so we've looked at a variety of frameworks, and what I like about this one is just the narrative that goes along with the steps, because I find the steps to be fairly similar across many of the frameworks. And one, there is a rooting that needs to happen in terms of understanding what the issue is, right? So if you're looking at step 1 through 4, basically, right? You're looking at the data, you're looking at the populations, you're really just trying to get a foundation of what is what, right? And so I think that's where Jen and Dr. Johnson and I have been trying to look at some of this work with the task force in doing the data dive, is really trying to establish our foundation. So we're creating a really strong why of going forward, right? So if a community says, well, why do we need to look at the curriculum, right? We have data to show X, Y, Z of why we think the curriculum needs to move. Or if we want to talk about different professional developments for teachers and staff, or for different trainings for students, right? We're rooting ourselves in the why with these data dives. So this one, again, I like it just because it has a narrative that I think is easy for people across the spectrum, like non-educators, community members, to really just walk through it and understand. It's also been pretty widely used, so it's not, solely in an academic realm. I think as you start to move through steps 4 and 5, like that's where I've heard a lot of the urgency from this group, is really getting into those strategies, right? And so I really respect the sense of urgency that everybody has to jump to strategies. And I recognize how frustrating it is to stay rooted in the why, but like we have to make a really solid case for why this work is important, and justify the decisions that are going to come around those strategies, and why we're going to allocate resources the way we do. Steps 6 and 7 are kind of like what happens once these systems are in place, right? We'll do annual equity audits. So that'll be work that we'll have to find a tool of, like, are we doing this work authentically? Are we doing this work honestly, right? So, and is it making a difference for the community, right? So the step 6 and 7 is the work that, like, we want to be mindful of, that we want to set ourselves up for. But we still, like, so we want to know where our end goal is, which are those steps, but there is a process to get there.
So I know that's not the same thing as the visual that I think you were crafting, Aaron, for, and you were saying, and what you and Ray were talking about. This isn't the same thing, but I think it feeds into like where we want to go. And I think there are some steps that we just want to make sure we're not, even though we want to get climate data surveys, and we've been looking at CASP data, and we've been looking at California Healthy Kids Survey data. I think we'll, at some point in the next couple meetings, we'll need to, I've been looking at the California Healthy Kids Survey data. We've all been looking at that data. We've been looking at the CASP data. We probably will need to put some stakes in the ground with like where we would like it to go from an equity lens, and make some recommendations to the board so we can have it grounded, our why grounded. So with that said, should we look at some of the questions that were asked?
Yeah, I'd just like to take a moment. Any questions or comments off of this tool just before, because it's been on the agenda a couple times. So I think people might have had a chance to look through it previously, but since this is the first time we've talked through it, love to hear thoughts from the group. And if there are no thoughts, that's okay too. Come with thoughts for the next time on it. It's a 16-page document, so it is something to look through, but it is an easy read.
Can we all see kind of how these steps make sense and kind of see where we are in the process here? So right now we're kind of at step 2, maybe even I think we're at step 1 and step 2. If we get our statement of why we're in existence, and then we're starting to look at data. And sorry, we're at step 3, 1, 2, and 3. I feel like that we're kind of somewhere in that range. Even though on the 15th we kind of jumped to, step 5, but we kind of have to backtrack a little, and then but we're trying to figure out how to backtrack and go forward simultaneously. So there are some things that we can do to kind of move things forward. Does that make sense?
If I may as well too, just because I was at the last meeting as well, I do think that a lot of things that we put forward, particularly like the speaker and such, to me, I actually think that there's another way of looking at them, is that to me, measures that can enhance our ability as the Equity Task Force to do steps 1 through 3. I think that, for example, something I reflected on over break is based off of Ray and Aaron's feedback is, we probably do need to bring somebody in. I've come to that conclusion. And even myself, I've shared with Jen that I did a lot of reading over the break, because I was like, man, I need more framework here to like ground myself. In the work, particularly with schools. I hate to say it, but the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. It's just the truth. And so I do think that acknowledging and recognizing that is a good first step to sort of trying to figure that out. But one being, I thought it was a good suggestion, and I think it will help us to have someone, that will come and give us feedback about where we're at and, where the goals. I've been listening to on tape How to Be an Anti-Racist, and even just from that, it's helped me reflect, thinking, on my way to work, like, okay, like those are definitions, that I thought I had an idea of, but here is to me a much more better concrete source to support. And that's why I've gone into, I just really respect ACSD publications. And my wife, I'll be honest, my wife does a lot of work in this area as well too. She's a director of special ed. And so I've leaned on her too for foundations to help guide, because like we're up against a real challenge. I shared this with Jenna Mackey. I'm going to share with you all as well too. The work that we're trying to do typically takes place in this format. I'm speaking as an educator. Typically one person does it. It's usually a principal, and they usually do it in isolation, and they present to a group of people what they intend to do, these conclusions. Trying to do it by committee, you mean like through a diverse group of stakeholders, is really hard. Data analysis and drawing conclusions and making recommendations, there's some school entities that don't do it. So I just want to applaud you all, and then also just acknowledge too, like I view this work as very challenging, and confusing as well, having personally engaged in it, particularly from the special ed standpoint. So I just wanted to add that in. I do think that acknowledging that we need support, and I think it's thanks to the suggestion from the Equity Task Force to bring in to enhance that work. The same thing with the survey. It's going to enhance what we're going to be able to do with our recommendations to move forward.
Thanks, Jason. So with that said, a couple things before we, I think I'm moving on to this next section, which would be to discuss the data, this plan of how to present data or give you all data, since it is a challenge to have everyone look through the data as a group and then comb through the data and then give notes on the data. One suggestion we made was maybe we as the board and the district give you some of our top line look at the data the next meeting, and give you a point of view on that, and then people can respond to that point of view versus making the whole group comb through the data. The data is still available to everyone. It's just maybe having a smaller group comb through it.
Which should be just that too. It should be critiqued and scrutinized. It shouldn't be like, all right, here are recommendations. Right. I think we've recognized that the task that we're trying to accomplish is just a challenge, especially by format. I've been part of LCAP committees, local control accountability plans. And that's those were always in-person sessions, kind of similar but different, assessing district needs. It's extremely hard and at times unfortunately very surface level. So I do think though that if we're bringing data summaries, or takeaways, that they should receive critique and scrutiny. Like why do you think that recommendation, or why do you think that summary? For this process, but I think this is just because we're recognizing a struggle with time, right, and with the logistics of doing data analysis.
Just confirming with the group though that everyone is feeling comfortable that if we came back to you with, here's our take on 3 years of data with the Healthy Kids Survey based off of what we know. These are areas we would recommend. These would be like goals we would think with an equity lens we should put before the board. Would the group feel comfortable receiving that data and being able to, you can make your own conclusions or go scrub the data yourself, but would you be comfortable with us taking a first stab at that?
I piggyback on that, Jen, because I think I just want to change the language of that a little bit.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't necessarily be goals, because goals is for the ETF to establish, but us highlighting areas of need.
Yes.
Identified areas of concern. It's not concern, not because there's anyone to blame. Concern because hey, this stands out. Something that, again, in just the recent readings that I've done, if someone brought it up, and actually ETF as well too, and it struck me, was they were talking about using societal data, right? As an indicator, which at first struck me as odd because it's outside of our school community, but then the more I thought about it and reflected, right, it makes sense as well. There's just general disproportionality, which, to be honest, I think also is an indicator within our schools when we looked at the demographic data as well too. It didn't entirely replicate, but it's similar trends. So I would say it's more about identifying those areas of needs, and then the ETF, that's where that you all come into play for okay, what are the goals that we try to build around these identified areas of need or concern, or we need more information. Or how did you identify this area as an area of concern, or is this enough? Is this single data point enough information to draw any sort of goal out of? Thanks, Jen.
Anybody have any comments about that? Or if you're comfortable with that method moving forward, then at our next meeting, we would bring information for you all to look at. Thank you, Ava, for the thumbs up. Anybody else have I see Ray. Thank you, Carrie. Thank you.
Very comfortable. I think it's a positive step. We'll be the meta-analysis, but the primary analysis is hard to do on Zoom with this many people.
Yeah. Okay, great. I'm glad we came to that too. So, all right. So with that said, then we also wanted to take a few minutes to at least give the district the opportunity we did come up with questions looking at the CASP data and some Healthy Kids Survey data, but I think Dr. Johnson has some answers or some things he wants to walk us through in terms of just information for the group to be aware of. And then Dr. Johnson, can you take 15 minutes to do that or less?
I can do it in less.
Okay, and then I'd like to spend the last portion of the meeting really taking a look at our statement and our mission and vision, so we kind of see if we can kind of come to a thumbs up on that too.
Michelle, can you also give me sharing rates as well too? Because there's a document that I do want to show, and it's not my email either. So sorry, I'm still laughing about that. So when we did our data analysis, the ETF had an opportunity to ask questions or like, hey, can we get this information as well? And so I just wanted to make sure that we followed up on those items, just to acknowledge like, hey, like we heard your questions, and our team did go back and look up that information to the best of our ability. So I'm going to read some of the questions, and then I'll have the follow-up answers. But one was just generally about the demographics of English language learner support. I think it's a fair question if you're looking at our data and our performance rates. So we currently have 23 English language learners or designated English language learners in our K-8 school district. There is one new student that we are still, at the time that we were answering this question, we're still determining their eligibility status. We have an English language learner coordinator, and that's Erin Infacino, and she support services, or her schedule is 200 minutes per week for students, English language learners, to support English language learners. So she's our Spanish teacher, but we're able with supplemental funds to afford, like her being designated for a period to support students and beyond as well too. And then we also have her participating in an English language development intervention that takes place outside of the traditional school day. What supports are we giving to our ELL population? So this was a question. So we have a program called Imagine Learning. It's a computer adaptive literacy software, and it can be used at home or in an English language arts class. We do, of course, have like our DLAC meetings once per trimester, and that's to engage parents. It's district level, but district level really is site level when it comes to things like this, because the population is relatively small, 23 students. We have an English language development intervention classes for grades 6 to 8. What it is we're doing 30 minutes a week for 6 to 8, and then 60 minutes per week for K5. And then we're also providing one-on-one 45-minute weekly tutoring sessions with Ms. Infacino for those of highest need or designated as highest need. I can tell you from my own experience in Redondo as well too, and it's the same here, is that in a district like ours, English language learner needs are very diverse. There's a lot of different types of demographics among like a Hermosa Beach English language learner population. I would say that most English language learner programming is developed or intended to support students that are academically struggling because of language, right? Like that's its goal. And that's not always the case necessarily with some of our demographics. And because it's such a small population, sometimes it's hard to sort of like mass produce like a program, because each need is so different. So that's why, right now, especially during COVID, our programming is a little eclectic, and a little more, it attempts to be a little more individualized relative to the resources that we have to make it individualized. We also recently had a classroom teacher support strategy session that's going to be on 1/11/21, and that's an upcoming PD meeting happening at Valley for Valley staff. For our EL, the next question is, are ELL students learning in their native language or just English? It's just English. When newcomers join us from a Spanish-speaking country, Ms. Infacino can assist with first language instruction to ease the transition. But it is infrequent that we have a newcomer with no English, and that I find is truly the case. Not never the case, but it is uncommon typically that there's no English background. Interestingly enough, in my former school, there was an influx of non-English speaking Russian students, which goes to show you how you can't necessarily put a pulse on it. You mean like we do live in a unique area, just to be honest. I mean, and so we get sort of like a collection of students that are designated as English language learners. What are the numbers for those who are learn in their native language versus having English while learning present? And of course, right now it's 0, right? And then the next question was teaching. What teaching and learning is done in first language to help students conceptually while growing language acquisition? Same answer as of right now. It's 0. Do schools have PDs around ELs and subgroups? Is there an EL lead in the schools? As I mentioned before, Ms. Infacino. And keep in mind too, the struggle with us is that's district wide, though she's located at one site. So just something to kind of keep in mind, from a programming standpoint. We have an annual EL PD in the spring for EL teaching strategies. It's required by our EL master plan. That's a compliance issue. And then views will be held in the spring of this year. And the spring session for Valley is going to be in January. That is a follow-up to the ELL questions. I'm just going to keep going just because I know we're on a time constraint. For special ed, can disabilities be defined to see what individual help is needed for each group to make greater improvements? So I'm going to run through our numbers here. So we have a total of 137 special education students. That's 11.5% of our district. Your special ed population should, national norm range somewhere between 8 and 12%. So we're on the high end. When you get into 13%, that's when you're very clearly over assessing or over diagnosing or making over eligible, and that's when you would and we are looking at our intervention processes to determine hey, what supports can we put in place, what interventions can we put in place before a student is designated as special ed. 137. And that's 11.5% of our current population. We've obviously had shifting enrollment too, so that number is fluctuating. Of those, we have 19 students with autism. 2 students qualify for emotional disturbance. That eligibility sounds way worse than it really is. I actually was an ED teacher at the high school. It's students with social emotional needs, just a very antiquated eligibility criteria, but keep in mind, these are federal criteria. So you mean it's a federal law, so that's why you see some of these antiquated terms. We have 2 students under what they call multiple disabilities. Multiple disabilities is one of the most restrictive eligibilities. That would be more aligned with a student that's in a self-contained program or a special day program. And what it means is that a student has two disabilities that are severe enough that you can't make one the primary and one the secondary. It's very common that students have a primary and a secondary eligibility. A classic example is a student who has a specific learning disability And then they also have speech, right? So like the primary disability is their specific learning disability, but then they have speech as their secondary.
Jason, there was a question in the chat on the number again.
I responded to that. And then you were good, right, Aaron? Yeah, okay. And then we have 2 hard of hearing. One OI, which is an orthopedic impairment. So that's a physical impairment. OHI, which is other health impairment. That's sorry, skipping around. 28 students have OHI. OHI is a very broad eligibility. Sometimes it's characterized as they didn't qualify for specific learning disabilities, so they qualified for OHI. Sometimes it is the catch for students that really struggle with ADHD. But keep in mind, ADHD is not it's a medical diagnosis, and it's not considered a disability under the IDEA Act, which is special education law. Typically, a student that has ADHD has a 504 plan, which is just a different federal law with relatively the same supports, but it's more accommodations based. And then you have 83 students with a specific learning disability, also a very broad category. Just in my personal experience, I don't find these numbers to be unusual as far as like the distribution of students that, the majority are with the criteria of specific learning disability. And I already shared about like the national norms in comparison with our special education percentages. So we're on the higher end of the national norm. And then I'm going to read this response because this is a little more in depth, but what can be learned from math achievement and how can this be expanded? Our math department and elementary stresses the foundation of each math concept that is taught, from starting off with using manipulatives like counters and base 10 blocks to eventually learning algorithms. A strong foundation needs to be laid out in order to move forward with a concept. It is also important that concepts are taught in a certain sequence so that students have the background information to learn a new concept. Also, they have the ability to collaborate and spend time reflecting on what is working and what needs to be modified in their lessons. For example, 7th grade students need to review the divisibility rules, 5th and 6th grade standard before they begin chapter 1. Our teachers have identified these areas of weakness. Reviewing assessment scores helps them pinpoint where students have gaps in knowledge. We offer a math clinic to students, has provided an opportunity with more one-on-one time with their teachers. Typically, they are able to help students before and after school. Also, our math teachers work together and are very consistent with their expectations. Students already know coming into a new class what the class will tend to be like, how they are supposed to show their work, and how they will be asked to explain their thinking. Math places a crucial emphasis on critical thinking in class, reading and understanding questions, understanding that there are different ways to come to the solution, and they explore those ways. They do a lot of group work so that students can talk it out with each other, which is a great way to learn. They also do their best to make math meaningful. Before teaching a topic, they try to find a way for students to discover the rules on their own. For example, why do angles in a triangle always add up to 180? So Miss Rockwell, we posed the question to her and she consulted with her math team at the Valley site because that's where the majority of CAS testing is taking place. And that was their response to what are the practices that may explain your stronger performance. And that is my follow-up, and I think that's under 15 minutes.
Thanks, Dr. Johnson. I'm sure, and we can, once we present to everyone some additional data highlighting areas of concerns and needs and takeaways and goals, we can continue to ask additional questions. Does that sound like a plan? Yep. All right. Dr. Johnson, all good?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks for letting me
great.
follow up.
Yeah, thank you for following up. All right, the last thing on our agenda today is let's take a look at where we're at. And this is, again, we've taken what Felicia has revised and edited, and then Carrie put input, and we all kind of gave some input, and then I went around and edited it again, and let's see where we're at with Michelle, if you can put it up on the board. All right. So maybe we might have to make it just a hair smaller, Michelle. All right. So yeah, let's start with this one. I tried to break it into two parts now. One is what the mission and vision is of the equity task force. So going back to like, what is our why? And Felicia, you might notice there a lot of the words are in here. I may have just flipped some of the paragraphs. And I just wanted to get let's read it through again now that we've talked about what our why is and what we really want it to be. Does this answer that? And do we feel comfortable with this? Or is there language in here that we want to strike? I will give everyone like 3 or 4 minutes to just look through it, make some notes, and then we'll come back to discussing it. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there is a part 2 at the bottom. Michelle, do you mind just maybe shrinking it a little more so then everyone can read both parts? Because I think you kind of have to see it in both sections, because I don't want you to think everything went away. Everything that got deleted is just moved to the bottom. Let me see if I can actually find a way to just put it in the chat too. I did just add it into the chat if you want to look at the entire thing in one go. Eva, you want to try now again to see if you can get it? Did you get in it? Yeah, okay. Does anybody need more time right now? Just give me a thumbs up if you need more time. All right, now then I've seen that no one does. We're gonna just, let's look at this these maybe 2 documents as a whole, so you can kind of see if we can make any like nodding headway on this one too. So we broke them into 2 separate parts. One is the mission and vision of the group, like what is our why, and then the statement on equity and diversity that we'd like to put in front of the board. And I just wanted to get should we start with just feedback on, or questions or wonderings?
I have one thing. It's minor, but just on the mission of it, first off, this is great, so thank you. And I know it took us a while to get here, so just I appreciate how much wordsmithing, and especially Felicia, even like whittling this thing down. So on the mission and vision, under ensure that board policies, programs, curriculum, hiring practices, and decisions, it's just hiring practice is actually a very specific thing. So I would recommend that we put human resources. I don't know if that necessarily English fits, but like that's on the same level as those other things. I think just on that, like it's like broad, and then a very specific thing, and then broad. So I would recommend human resources, and I think it still encompasses all of that.
Yep.
Or would our hiring practices part of the board policies?
Same thing, like human resources encompasses, you mean like all of hiring, you mean like how we deal with our employees, everything from evaluations to progressive discipline to, their rights. So that's why I would just say that I would say would be on the same level as something like board policies, programs, curriculums. And then to go to hiring practices would be like this like very specific niche.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
I know it's my sentence, so I'm laughing that I don't like it, but tell me you guys how finite we want to be, but these decisions will center around an equity lens. Honestly, you don't center something around a lens, you would view it through an equity lens. And so yeah. I just wanted to put that out there that if everybody was like ignoring that because it's fine with me, but it is a little funny to me to look at my own writing and go like, you look through a lens, you don't, but whatever.
Maybe like we'll center around just equity.
Yeah, I think center around equity sounds better.
Yeah.
Or
it has to will be viewed through, because that's lenses. Just can't center around it. So
yeah, I think this is such great work, and I just think it's beautifully worded. I had 2 things that can be totally swept aside if you don't like it, but on one of them, if we want it to be a little bit more hit a little bit harder, it could be instead of addressing, we could put dismantling. So in that second paragraph under the why, we are committed to proactively and continuously dismantling structural racism. And then the other one was just to give ourselves a little bit of grace, and instead of will ensure, maybe that we will work to ensure. It's like, it seems kind of 100%. So just a little grace there.
Where's that line, Erin?
It's right after structural racism and implicit biases, and we'll work to ensure that broad policies, programs, curriculum, hiring practices.
I support both of those. I think they're both good suggestions.
is there a reason we took equity out of the first paragraph? I'm looking at that thinking, it's an equity task force and we have diversity and inclusion, but we left out equity. And I think we might want to frame all of this with the DEI lens.
Where's the word missing?
The last sentence of the first paragraph, grounded in the understanding of how equity, diversity, and inclusion improve the way we experience and thrive in the world.
I don't know why I or you or someone, we cut it up, but we will add it back in.
You know, I could do this for years and still find things. So I think the part that I'm the most concerned about is where we undid the definition of equity at the second paragraph, where we say equal chance to thrive. That's not really equity. And
well,
I looking at it.
Just talk about specific sentences so we can get to specific.
Well, are we still working on mission and vision? Then I'll jump down.
Yeah, we're still working on mission and vision and the why.
Okay.
Is yours on the second?
Yep.
Okay. No problem. Hold on. Anybody else? Well, so I'll open my screen back up wider. Yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
This is specific. It's just a small detail, but on the first paragraph, when we're talking about developing our students, I might just add the word all of our students, because again, that's embracing kind of the inclusion. This just feels a little bit like we're nodding toward kind of our community of kids and how it benefits all of them. But again, the equity is one where we want to make sure that all are involved. So it's probably kind of nodding to what you're saying, Felicia.
I like that.
All of our students.
Okay.
No one's left out.
Yeah. Can I talk to that line too? Again, this is beautiful. And Felicia, I know you put so much work into this. When we talk about develop our students, I guess I think of that as being very one way, that like the teachers are creating this product. And I like to think of education as very reciprocal. So I'm just wondering, is there a word where we're really talking about, giving students the tools, or, is there an eloquent way to put that where really we're working as a team, where, the students and the educators are working as a team to create this, generation of 21st century learners. So I guess, I'm a little stuck on that word too.
Yeah. I think also we're not developers, we're also educators. So it kind of
right.
Education too.
Right.
Our mission is to
Vivian or Ava or Elisa, do you have other words that might feel good to you there?
I mean, we're really empowering, right? I mean, we're giving them the tools, we're empowering them. That's kind of what's coming to mind, that I want to see it as a more reciprocal process, more of a teamwork than the teachers are creating these, students.
Our mission, we don't have to have a verb there. Our mission is, we could educate 21st century leaders, empower 21st century leaders. We don't have to have develop in there at all. We could take that whole piece out and just put an action word that kind of encompasses
foster,
shape. Hillary suggested shape.
Shape is good. And we don't even have to say our mission is. We can say we will. I mean, we could be far more active than we are being.
I like that.
We will empower 21st century leaders. And in some ways, it doesn't have to say students, right? These could be, we're going to do this for our community. We're going to do this for us. We're shaping 21st century leaders on this call. Zoom.
Hey everyone. Sorry to be the party pooper. The city has a meeting right behind us, so they're going to need the line.
The city.
We love our city, for the record. They're phenomenal.
They are.
Shout out to Suja.
Yep. No problem. But so can I just confirm that we just that maybe to an agreement we say our mission is to shape or empower. We have a thumbs up on. We got to choose a word.
Maybe empower.
I like empower.
I like empower
I
too
like
because
empower.
shape
Yeah.
has some connotation to it as well too.
Mhm.
Right. It's similar to develop in that we're kind of, cookie cuttering people, right? And we want to empower them to find their paths and, really find their strengths and their own voices. And I think that's about empowerment.
Okay.
I like dropping our students. It's also possessive. It feels a little patriarchal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So drop.
We will empower 21st century leaders. Man, that's good work.
All right, we literally got to cut the line. Sorry.
All right. So we got to the first
Thank you,
one,
everyone.
people. I think we got to the first one. We're going to work on the second one to the second one. We can
Thanks,
do this.
everyone. Appreciate you all.
Yes. Thanks for the work today.
Yeah. Bye.
Okay. Goodbye.
Thank you.